welcome back. You're still watching Power Breakfast right here on Citizen TV. It's that time when you take a look at the headlines, and this morning the energy on this table is infectious, to say the least. Privileged to have Cynthia Mutere, political analyst, Jarvis Bigambo, governance analyst, and Mark Bichachi, a political analyst. This is my news review team this morning. You realize we're doing away with hard politicians. We want to allow them to go on campaign, so that we can have a proper objective analysis. Objective analysis of the happenings, of the happenings around the country. A quick look at the headlines this morning. Of course, the IAAF World Under-18 Championships kicked off yesterday at the Kasarani Stadium. Continues for the next 2-3 days. Very interesting. Of course, have you seen Kasarani looking so good? When was the last time you actually saw it looking? I was watching TV and you wonder, wow, is that really Kasarani? Oh gosh,
I think I was in in primary school when there was that geography book, geography, history, and civics, and they do pictures of what Moi has done. You remember? That's the last time Kasarani looked that good.
Wow. That is one. But then again, I think looking the optics displayed of Kasarani tells you that if we put our minds to it and invest our resources properly, we're capable of so much.
Yes,
we're capable of so much.
That's the Kenyan curse. Kenyans are so intellectually brilliant, and when push comes to shove, we can deliver amazing things.
We just
So Kasarani has gotten a facelift? I think I've missed it.
Yeah,
it has. Believe it or not, I don't know. I've been out.
Well, the official launch, the official opening of the meet was yesterday. President Uhuru Kenyatta was there, and he declared that from today the entry is free, so you can go and watch. Yes. So anyone now there who wants to,
she saw it, she just didn't recognize it.
I thought you were talking about a facelift.
It looks really nice though.
Wow.
Of course, very interesting headlines here, and today it's a bit different. The Daily Nation talks about regions that could hold key to poll victory. The Standard talks about 10 rigging risks in poll registers. Like, we've taken a break from the issues that we've been discussing, and now we're looking into the process and how people are going to vote. We'll be looking at this in a short while. Probably later on, and if I could ask my director to assist me with this, we'd like to see what happened in Kisumu vis-a-vis what happened in Baringo, with the kind of reaction and welcome that greeted William Ruto in Bita, vis-a-vis what happened in Baringo when they had what happened in Bita. Yes, let's start with this on the Daily Nation. Regions that could hold key to poll victory. Of course, they've broken it down to Coast, Kajiado Narok, Kisii Nyamira, and Western. Now, these are the places that we've seen both NASA and Jubilee going back to repeatedly. The Coast region, which in 2013 voted a certain way, is now considered a battleground. Kajiado Narok has always been dicey. Kisii Nyamira as well. Western, as always. Western is not Western is not really a shock.
We are the only democratic tribe in this nation.
We're going to be pulling a fast turn this time around.
Well, those regions, well, it's okay the way they've been indicated, but there are lots of dynamics when you look at those selected areas. For example, pick areas like Kajiado Narok. When you look at the 2013 elections, you realize, for example, let me pick the scenario in Narok, for instance. In 2013, Raila Odinga and the CORD, the presidential vote went to NASA. And Uhuru Kenyatta was not left very far behind. And then when you come to these other positions, all of them went to Jubilee.
Exactly.
Now, the situation may not change much again in 2017. Only that there may be checkered here and there, but those dynamics tell you that these areas are likely to provide something very interesting that may surprise even some of these parties if they are not calculating very well. Go, for example, to an area like Western. Yes, most of the time, and right now, the greatest persuasion of the Western region is for NASA. I do expect maybe close to 9% Jubilee vote.
But 9% is huge given the numbers in Western, 1.9 million.
Your point is very critical, and I agree with these particular regions, but I also disagree, because I keep saying this election is 50+1. Okay, it's 50 plus 1, which means that if you're able to get 10% of 1.7 million votes in cost, that's 170,000. Now, if you look at the electoral victory of 2013, you only had 700,000 people. So effectively, if Jubilee could be able to hive off 10% in each of these regions, it is significant. This election is going to come down to two things. Number one, voter turnout. It's going to be very critical. That if let me tell you, I'll predict today, if there is 70% voter turnout in Nyanza, Raila loses. That's a fact. If there is 80% voter turnout in Central, Uhuru is in trouble. Why? Because these numbers are so tight, and if any of these coalitions is able to score even the tiniest margins in these particular regions, it could be enough to force them.
3 weeks to the election, I think those are the numbers that both of the strategic teams on either side is really working on, because now they've already now hived out where are we going to be concentrating. Of course, right now we're seeing both of them going to visit the opponent's stronghold, so to speak, and so we're seeing the reception that is coming out through there. But to say that it's very tight, I just want to pick up on what you were saying, that you need to get that voter turnout, the voter turnout, and to cause a voter apathy even on the other side, so that it works for you. And so this is the strategies that both are employing, and it's going to be important.
However, of course, the data crunchers on both sides could have failed, could be a little too late in the game. They should have started this crunching and positioning by the time of voter registration, and then push it through voter turnout. Now, of course, that one went by the winds. Right now, as you're speaking, and that's why when you see, for example, as it's expected, NASA to go to parts of Central region today,
they're going to Oranga and back to Kiambu parts of
all that they want. They know very well that they cannot hold sway of those regions because they are strongly Jubilee areas, but they want to have pockets of significant votes going.
Back in 2013, Raila Odinga got 61,000 votes from Kiambu. If we could build on that, and probably because even the voter numbers in Kiambu have swelled, and maybe get 100,000, that could be huge.
Now, I expect a bit of swelling because of what has been perceived as legitimate discontent by some people in those areas. Just the same way, for example, it would be a very wrong calculation or assumption, say on the part of NASA, to imagine that, say, even a few significant votes will not come from Western region and even the Nyanza region.
For Jubilee, in favor of Jubilee?
Look at it this way. The voter numbers in Western region here, 1.927. Even 10%, that's 190,000.
That's very low. That's a lot. And so we want to bring it down to less than 5. Less than 5.
The critical thing is this, and when you look at those numbers, you begin to realize very quickly what the dynamics of these elections are. There is a bloc that is voting against Raila, okay? Then there is a bloc that is sort of having lethargy towards Jubilee. They've kind of let me down, okay? Now, the question becomes, how much can you drive that anti-Raila sentiment in Central and be able to say, you know what, we may have let you down a little bit, but come out and vote for us, we're your guys. That's the question. Now, when you come to the Luhya side of things, it's a bit tricky, because the Luhya psyche is about making a king. That's why they've always coalesced. Luhyas will coalesce when they're able to see this is the guy who can bring us close to the kingship.
True to that. Do you know why the Luhyas, for a very long time, have always been considered this democratic? It's not that many Luhyas are very democratic by nature, because we're in the same country. It's only that
when you're talking about Luhya, you're talking about the Western Kenya.
The Western Kenyan region. The Western Kenyan region. But especially when you were to isolate the Luhya, Luhyas in this country have never known the use of political power, because they have never really been the reins of it. The only time they came close to it is during the time of Musalia Mudavadi's father, and helped lots of them to become teachers. So even those that are actually in awe of Musalia Mudavadi, it's because of the great memories of his father.
I want to stop my brother right there and just ask him to go
just a minute.
Tap a little, another 10 years, another 20 years behind, and get back to the Masinde Muliras. Get back to the people
But do you know, if, for example, Wamalwa Kijana would have been vice president for long and then possibly ascended to the presidency, then the Luhya community would have appreciated the effect, the power, and the goodness of having the reins
which
of
some have
control.
already seen, which some have already bought in. Now you're trying to bring everyone on the table to have the same vision.
I think, was it last week or 2 weeks ago, Deputy President was in Mungoma and went even as far as promising CS Eugene Wamalwa the running mate's position.
Running mate's position, which the Luya community,
how much
I will
of a
tell
sway
you,
do you think? Because, you know, they only need like 10% from there.
if you see how the Luyas voted in 2013, of course, Raila won Mudavadi in Western region, but the word on the ground is like, we will give our own. And they have been waiting for someone who is going to step up and actually go for the presidency. Of course, right now there's talk about now supporting, already talk that they'll be supporting, Raila saying he's going to throw his weight behind Kalonzo Musyoka. But of course, you're going to expect that there will be a Luya person who's stepping up, either Wetangula or Mudavadi, going for the presidency, and he's going to take it all the way to the ballot, because they have they are tired to be second fiddle. We have had Vice President Awori, we have had Vice President.
Let's move to Coast Region, which voted a certain way. It was almost unanimous in 2013. Why is it now a battleground?
I don't think it's a battleground per se, and remember, this conversation is about the +1 conversation. So for Jubilee, and this is the critical thing, if they're able to get 10-20% of the votes in Coast, that is a major win for them. Winning this election is not going to be about getting 100%. It is how much of that 100% you can reduce, and that's what makes Coast.
Let's look at the numbers in 2013. Raila got 603,000. Uhuru got about a quarter of that. If Uhuru could just push to maybe a third of that, that changes the game.
But what are the factors that are likely to, or possibly going to make Jubilee gain those, or have a significant, even however thin it is, a gain of 2013? Now, which part of that entire coastal strip or region are we likely to see Jubilee being favored? We don't expect Jubilee to do very well in Mombasa. Very well, not really.
Kilifi?
But Kilifi, of course, not the same. Kwale, we are likely to see just slightly. But then Taita Taveta and this lower parts, we are likely to see, you know, areas that are likely to give Jubilee a bit of votes. But
and those few pockets will matter.
Yeah, but coastal region is likely, or actually is largely expected, to remain overwhelmingly a NASA area.
Overwhelmingly a NASA area. Of course, Jubilee has done very many trips. They're trying to eat into that voting bloc of the NASA regime, but then NASA coalition. But I think they're finding it difficult, because when you're having like at least 3 principals or 3 governor aspirants who are all trying to get that vote, you see that they're actually mobilizing for the presidency of NASA, and so still NASA still has a bigger hand than Jubilee, even in the coast.
And you know, the critical thing, and for me this election is coming down to this, Fred. This election is going to come down to how far Jubilee or NASA can encroach into each other's territory. It's almost like they're punching at the same level, so it's that extra ability to just sneak a punch into the boxing ring and do that knockout punch. That is the question. But that's what they're fighting for.
However, what are these persuasive last-minute arguments that each side is likely to make that will help? Because in the end,
say arguments.
Basically here I'm talking about persuasion, because of the undecideds. The undecideds, and in those areas where you want to get a bit of pockets of votes and support. Because look at it this way.
Undecided in interior Kenya?
In the last week of this election, I don't expect much to change in terms of voter appreciation.
What do you think about
now?
Because you are going to be changing some of the things that you can do externally outside of the campaign rallies. Something like now the wage bill that happened yesterday, the day before, and having the president come out very strongly and supporting what the SRC did and reducing backwards. I do, and you saw the media go out and get Maoni Awatu, you know, just what the people are saying on the ground. It does to a certain extent if you feel that this regime is actually now reducing the cost for us, and who is the one who has our interest at heart. Of course, there are those who are going to be thinking you've had 4.5 years to have done
whether or not the electorate is still listening
to this. Some of those are the tactics.
Because I think we've moved on from that, and politicians are just now throwing arguments up and down, left, right, center.
You can sway voters on the last day. Voters are swayed when they are on the line going to vote. People are swayed right at the ballot box.
without knowing for whom they're going to vote.
Let's calm down.
They're very excited. So.
Now let's look at let's look at what happened in Kisumu yesterday, and no, actually in Mbita. President Uhuru Kenyatta took his campaigns to Mbita and Ahero and eventually Kisumu. But the reception that Deputy President William Ruto got was a bit cold. Is the Deputy President a liability in this particular campaign in some areas? Let's watch what happened.
It was by a veritable invasion of enemy territory, President Kenyatta leading Jubilee in a daring blitz of Kisumu and Homa Bay counties, taking the vote and right to opposition leader Raila Odinga's doorstep. Unexpected lukewarm welcome met them as they took to Mbita in Homa Bay and Ahero and Kisumu later. And earlier warnings by a section of the region leaders that the DP was not particularly welcome were vindicated in a hostile reception for Kenyatta's running mate.
Najua kuna jamaa mwingine alisema ati Ruto asikuje Homa Bay. Kwani yeye ameombea kura Raila kuliko mimi? Mimi ndio nimeombea Raila kura kuliko Kajwang. Hawache maneno.
Kenyatta acknowledging the electorate here had every right to have their say at the ballot.
Haja ni ya kwamba tuataka maendeleo katika kila kona ya taifa letu la Kenya. Tunaelewana? And you deserve to be served by your government regardless of where you vote. Tunaelewana? Na hiyo msingi mimi sitawacha, tutaendelea now.
But the DP braved the rejection and stuck to marketing Jubilee's action plan.
Mbali na hii mambo inafanyika hapa leo. Barabara inatengenezwa kutoka Mbita kwenda Sindo mpaka kule Karungu. Kilomita 80 mpya ya lami.
In Mbita, Kenyatta would open the 1 billion shilling Mbita Town Rusinga Island Bridge, saying his administration would not discriminate anyone in terms of development.
Sasa kwa sababu tuko na daraja, ile wanataka sasa ni barabara ya kuzunguka Ring Road Rusinga. Na hiyo tumekubaliana ya kwamba hiyo ya Rusinga na ile barabara ingine ya mfangamano hizo tutajenga. Sawa sawa.
Kenyatta also wading into Migingo Island waters that have been a source of friction between Kenya and Uganda.
Lakini wenzetu, ile kitu ningewaomba. Sawa sawa. Hata tukijua ya kwamba ni kwetu. Mimi nawauliza wenzangu, tusiwe watu ambao tutatusi jirani zetu.
Kenyatta and Ruto would oversee the reopening of the EABL plant in Kisumu at a cost of 15 billion shillings, as well as the Kenya pipeline plant.
Ordinarily being an opposition stronghold, Jubilee did not campaign in Kisumu back in 2013. Things being different this year, however, touting their development record and urging the electorate if only to use that on the weighing scale to give them votes come 2017 August 8th. Jackie Maribe, Citizen TV in Kisumu.
Yes, in a short while we'll be looking at what happened to NASA when they visited Baringo yesterday. But seeing that reaction, and would it have been better for the president just to go alone on this particular trip?
You know, one of the things that Kenyans need to understand is Uhuru's popularity is at 60%. Okay, which tells me that if this particular election was run the way we used to run in the old times, where it's just one guy saying I'm running for president, I'll appoint a deputy and things like that, Uhuru would probably have won this thing by himself. Okay, there's the baggage that Uhuru carries and Jubilee carries is not, funnily, it's like Uhuru is by himself, and then his party, and then his government. Uhuru has come out as being very nationalistic as a person. He's very likable, he's very sociable. Every place he's gone to, he's accepted. My view is this, that Uhuru Kenyatta remains immensely popular, and the question is his ability to carry his popularity into his party and into the election.
I don't know about the 60%, but one thing I would just say is that to compare and contrast the energy of both Uhuru and Ruto and the tone of the speech. If you see how Ruto addresses the crowd and you meet that rejection, he continues to press his ideas and tell that we are bringing development. It's almost like you're shoving it down their throats. And the people will tell you, take your road, roll it up and carry it on your back and go with it. We don't want you, we don't want anything you're bringing to us. But then you see, then the president's tone is like, oh, we want to do this for you. This is our mandate. And since I am president of this nation, of course he doesn't say it, but he's coming out and saying that this is my duty, I'm here to give you. It's just the tone of how you're addressing. Very likable, very approachable, very just resonating with the crowd. You need to be speaking with the crowd. You don't just come and order in a dictatorial manner that we're here, and then you're speaking in a derogative manner to their principal, saying now you're mujama mwingine, like, you know, like
it comes down to personality differences. Because Deputy President William Ruto is naturally a political whirlwind. He likes being stormy. That's how he entered the politics in Eldoret North. That's how he has sustained it. And because he knows that he's naturally a juggernaut, then he wants to push that to every area in the country. I have argued many times that Deputy President needs to get fine strategists for him who can guide him on how to approach different areas. Now, look at it this way. It would be proper, for example, for the Deputy President, and it's not in bad faith, let the strategists within the Jubilee Party guide, for example, that let the Deputy President also spend some time consolidating the entire Rift Valley vote, because it's not fully consolidated. And then in these other areas, for example, I'll isolate the Nyanza area, I'll isolate the western area. Let the president go there with his own persuasion and have conversations with the people.
In the absence of the Deputy President.
Yeah, he doesn't need to tag along. He's doing the reverse.
That will work. Because even if you look at the Kisumu situation, the Mbita situation rather, you realize that the president's tone was conversational.
Yes.
And remember that even as it's stipulated in our constitution, a president is a symbol of national unity. And that's why that conversational approach is very necessary. Let the people see and feel you.
Yes.
And that will be able to earn them pockets of votes in areas that are perceived to be enemy.
And then you still assert your authority, because when he speaks about Migingo being Kenya's territory, he speaks with authority, and you can still see that authority as head of state. You don't have to arrogantly speak to that situation where you find that there's resistance from the people. You just need to assert yourself in a certain way. So I do think it is really personality.
You agree that he should stay away from certain regions?
You know, the truth of the matter, if we have to be very realistic, is, and this is why I talked about Uhuru's popularity. Uhuru can literally walk into studio right now, and regardless of our individual persuasions, we would all welcome him warmly. But the Deputy President does have that problem of being able to carry his popularity across different places in Kenya. Now, if you're a Jubilee strategist, what do you need to do? You need to market Uhuru Kenyatta as far as possible, because he's marketable
this
everywhere.
is one ticket. It's unlike previously where you can
could
appoint
campaign on your own. You have to go with your deputy
all of us have
president
gone to the
as well.
market before. All of us have been on the market. When you go to the market and you want to buy tomatoes, these mamas at the marketplace, what kind of tomato do they place on top? The one that's sprinkled with water.
Yes.
The one that is fleshy, succulent, and you know, very good looking and smooth. That is how they're supposed to do it. It's about branding and positioning. For these elections, going in various areas, let the finest tomato be put on top.
Because the Deputy President has a certain kind of effect in some different areas.
Yes.
And he can vote well and actually get proper crowds. Maybe they should focus on that.
You see, exactly. You know, the thing is, and you'll probably see this happen more often, you'll see that Jubilee will have to leverage Uhuru's popularity in certain areas and leverage Ruto's personality and his popularity in certain areas. It is political strategy, it makes sense, and in Uhuru's case, Uhuru actually has the ability to go to certain areas and say, you know what, I've been a fair president.
And they've used that strategy before, where they have split, where Uhuru goes into a certain area and Ruto is going into a certain area. Now, once you have marked that he's not too favorable in Nyanza, then you want to drop him off, especially now that you're on the home stretch. It's 3 weeks to ballot, and you don't want to be having that kind of reaction from the crowd.
And NASA seems to be, picking, very important lessons from this. Look at how, for example, they're approaching the Mount Kenya region. You will not see, for example, Governor Isaac Ruto, who is naturally confrontational, going to woo voters in the central region. Actually, he will not be received. properly, he'll find hostility that he's never witnessed before. And that's why, for example, with Raila's political history, having worked with Kibaki, etc., and whatnot, and even with Uhuru Kenyatta himself in the 2005 referendum issues, and the acclaim of pushing towards the no vote, you remember, during that time, that history has easily made Raila Odinga acceptable, because he has dealt with these people. He knows what tones and what keys to strike when he's in the central region.
Let's now take a look at what happened in Baringo yesterday, because NASA also found it a bit difficult when they took their campaigns to that region.
A national super alliance brigade had flown to the North Rift County of Baringo for a series of rallies in Kabarnet, Eldama Ravine and Chomolingot. It is in Kabarnet that NASA met a hostile crowd that chanted pro-Jubilee slogans, forcing Raila Odinga, Musalia Mudavadi and Isaac Ruto to cut short their address. NASA branded materials including t-shirts, caps and posters were set ablaze.
Sisi tulikuwa tayari leo kupokea Raila hapa. Lakini wakati tuliona pande Kisumu amekataa kupokea president na Jubilee, tukasema kwamba hata yeye hataongea pande hii.
Sisi hatukuwa na shida yoyote. Kama Kisumu wangemkaribisha vizuri, pia sisi tungefanya nini? Tungemkaribisha vizuri.
However, Odinga's team proceeded to Eldama Ravine to a warm reception. NASA accusing Jubilee of failed reforms in the security sector.
Tunawajua mpaka waleo hawajajenga, na hiyo mambo ni moto itatokea kwa Public Accounts Committee hata bunge hiyo.
Tunataka kuhakikisha Kenya iko na usawa, kila Mkenya apate haki yake, vijana wapate kazi, watoto wasome.
The high cost of living, skyrocketing of food prices as well as hunger scarcity in the country also took center stage, the leaders accusing the president of mismanaging the country.
Hatutaweza kuondoa Kenya kwenye nchi ya fukara. Na ukipigia kura yeye, umepigia Musalia, umepigia Kalonzo na Wetangula. Ndio sisi tuongoze nchi hii kwa usawa.
Kambani, Odinga's running mate Kalonzo Musyoka and ODM Deputy Party Leader Ali Hassan Joho combed through Machakos County in a bid to solidify the over 1.4 million votes spread across the three Ukambani counties.
And I want to warn and tell our friends, if indeed they still are our friends, in Jubilee, that we either have a country that believes in the rule of law, or we have a bandit country.
Kama iko wakati ambaye munafaa mutoke kwa fujo na mupigie Wiper kura, NASA kura, hakuna wakati wengine isipokuwa ni mwaka huu 2017.
Tomorrow the NASA team is scheduled to campaign in President Uhuru Kenyatta's home turf of Murang'a and Kiambu.
Yes, NASA heads to Murang'a and Kiambu today, but yesterday they were in Baringo, and that was the situation there. Quick thoughts on that?
You know, for me, I find it very interesting, and I'll be a bit of a critic of the so-called resistance. First is you know, there's a difference between a crowd reaction and a few people banning posters, as I saw in that poster. I need to find an aerial view. First and foremost, if you look at the Kisumu, the Nyanza crowd and how they treated, it is a reaction. Okay, it is a reaction. You're saying something I don't like, and I'm telling you, don't say that. But when Uhuru comes on stage, you can see that. This one seems a bit more hostile and a bit more demonstrative in terms of the banning and the things like that. I would really like to have an investigative journalist tell us whether this was something that was staged by a politician locally to just do that. But what is critical for me in this particular election, and for me, I congratulate Kenyans for the level of maturity that we are showing now. Do you know, in 2013, these guys never campaigned in each other's strongholds. They never set foot in each other's strongholds. So the fact that Kenyans are able to listen to both sides is a sign of maturity as a nation. My particular take is I think we should be able to accept these guys, come and campaign in whoever's stronghold as peacefully as possible.
And NASA is doing that. And NASA, I'd give the Baringo to about 80%, because of the 5 stops I think that they have actually said, it is one where they find hostility, and that's the one that has been highlighted. And of course it's Kabarnet. You know that in Baringo County then there's the sibling rivalry, Gideon Moi and Ruto, of course, trying to get supremacy, who reigns around this area. So I would also agree with you where they have received resistance, that probably a local politician tried to assert, like, this is my territory, don't come in. That way, and you usually find that when crowds or youth, you would find in a whole crowd. I've been to enough rallies where you find that there's a pocket that is demonstrating in a particular way, then you would know that these people have been facilitated to react in a certain way. But when you find the entire crowd moving and rejecting now your message, then you know then that's a message from this community in this area.
My thoughts are not going to be a sweetener in the tea of political reflection this morning on that matter. Now, looking at, for example, Baringo, question arises, and even before that then, because I want to look deeply back. Is this reception of other politicians into the strongholds of their opponents genuine reception and support, or is it just a veiled kind of reception to try and demonstrate that there is tolerance, yet deeply or inherently there is political intolerance?
You want to come out and listen to what what are they saying?
Yeah.
And so I think that is our democratic maturity. Because I would want to, because I don't want to completely block my ears if I was a Jubilee supporter to hear what NASA really has to
And that's why it's agreeable that there is a difference between now and how it was in 2013 and even in the run up to the 2007. However, of course we know very well the place of political intolerance. From the days of Joseph McCarthy in the 1950s in the US up to now, we know very well that this kind of intolerance, of course, is always a precursor some kind of tension and chaos. Now, let's face it, because of what happened in Bita yesterday, especially facing the deputy president, looking at what happened in Baringo yesterday, we are likely to see a bit of ripples of this kind of antagonism the thing is this. What, like for example, let's get from the horse's mouth what that lady and that gentleman said in Baringo, that had the president been received very well in Bita, all right, no, those are the words, no, let's cite it, we would also have listened to them here. Now, this, I want to imagine that they were not coached individuals who spoke on the camera. The lady spoke and the gentleman spoke. This tells you that at times, maybe for them, it was a question of returning favor of what had happened to Jubilee on the other part of the country. And truth be spoken here, it would be important for us to look at it through the lenses of cohesiveness of our nation. In fact, what happened yesterday in Bita, what happened in Baringo, should also inform various institutions, for example, the NCAC and various other stakeholders, to try and implore my fellow citizens in the run-up to these August elections.
Besides those institutions, I think we, as we speak, we need to speak because we have a platform.
NASA is going to Moranga.
We happen together. And that's what you need to be speaking to. You need to be speaking for tolerance. If you don't want to listen to someone, don't go to their rallies. Don't go, and we need to be speaking to that. We need to be encouraging
Moranga and parts of Kiambu today. Do you expect any of that to happen again?
You know, the reality of the matter, and I keep saying this, let's be very clear as a country. Violence is planned, violence is sponsored, and violence has to be sustained by someone with deep pockets.
So this is politicians, this is a work of politicians.
Yes. So we need to understand that even if you look at 2007, and when the commission wrote its report, you realize that sustained violence is never spontaneous. Okay, let me just finish my foundation, because I want to disagree with you. You see, one of the things that you need to understand in this nation, and I want to set the nation at ease. If you remember Nakuru and Naivasha in 2007, when there was violence, only one army unit was released in Nakuru and Naivasha, and in less than 24 hours everyone was in their houses. What does that tell you? What that tells you is this, that over the last 10 years as a nation, we've matured in, number one, our security forces, and two, our understanding of what political risk is to me as a Kenyan. So what do I expect in Murang'a? You have seen, even when the SRC did their reports, did their recommendations rather, you've seen Kenyans react to manifestos more than they've ever reacted before. We are looking at a Kenya which is maturing. We are looking at a Kenya who is able to listen to Raila Mudavadi and Uhuru and Ruto and still have their own convictions, but be able to listen. Yes, listen, let me finish. To be able to listen to them without being violent. What is key to notice in both Kisumu and Kabarnet is there was not a stone that was thrown. There is not a person that was injured. What does that tell you? You see, it is unfair to say, and I'm tired of people saying this, that there will be violence in this
nation.
Will be no violence.
There will be no violence. Let us distillation of the Alston report, and even the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights report on the brink of the precipice, and all the other reports that came out of the 2007 report will tell you one thing. Yes, agreeable with you. One fact is that sustained violence is always precipitated, is always financed, and is always standing on the legs of certain politicians.
Thank you.
But we cannot argue to the end, assuming, for instance, that there was no spontaneity in that kind of violence. There are those ripple effects. The domino effect of violence being facilitated by a certain person will rub off on some elements, and that's what we need to guard against. I am not a prophet of violence. In fact, I reject it with every substance in me. In fact, I have rejected even the proposition by some that we anticipate some possible violence in the August elections.
So how do you mitigate hostile crowds? How do you mitigate hostile crowds?
And that is why. And what is the role?
And
what is the role?
For example,
we need to go on a break. What is the role of the respective party leaders? In this case, Raila Odinga, President Uhuru Kenyatta, because now I think probably Raila Odinga would have spoken with the politicians in Nyanza and said, once Uhuru comes here, President Uhuru...
I know before we go out into the two things I do expect today, in a very reasonable way. Two things. One, a statement from the secretariats of all these political parties, calling for calm, tolerance, and respect for all political sides. I expect also a statement, mature statement, on the part of the Jubilee side, the president and the leadership president, and then also on the part of the principals in NASA. If that happens, then we'll be setting the right tone, clearing the path for that reasonable elections that we expect in this.
And on that note, we take a break. We'll be back to discuss more headlines. Power Breakfast continues.